Ivica Zubac is the only known rotation center for the Clippers this upcoming season, and he's featuring for the Croatian national team in EuroBasket. And today, they were knocked out of the tournament, and he only played 3 minutes. Why was that? Did he not play well? Is it an injury concern? We'll be going over it right here on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day. I am your host, Darian Vaziri, 18 years a Clipper fan. You can also find me on Twitter, on Instagram, my own podcast as well, and YouTube channel at Dime Dropper Pod and Dime Dropper on YouTube and your favorite podcasting platforms, where I also talk about the Clippers and LA sports as a whole. So for today's episode, I was hoping to talk about a great performance by Ivica Zubac in a Croatia round of 16 EuroBasket victory to give you some update or some status on the Clippers, one of the Clippers' current players that's actually playing right now, actually doing something right now, because we've kind of reached that point of the offseason where it's like we've gotten all the free agency moves, we've gotten all the big trades, or at least we think we have, we as in the NBA. Every big major move. A lot of players have been moved. Kevin Durant's whole fiasco, nothing happened. He stayed put. So it looks like we're about ready in terms of what these rosters are going to look like going into opening night and going into the preseason. But we haven't gone to preseason yet. So right now it's just kind of looking for things to talk about. And something Asher mentioned when he came on the podcast a couple episodes ago when we were talking about Moussa Diabate and Moses Brown and having the conversation of if the Clippers do need a backup big. He said that EuroBasket, which is like the Euro Cup for basketball, if anybody watches soccer or international football, it's like the Euro Cup for basketball. And Giannis, Luka, Lauri Markkanen was playing for Finland against Zoo today. And the Croatian national team didn't just have Zoo that was in the NBA. They had Bojan Bogdanovic from the Utah Jazz. They had Mario Hezonja. And also Dario Saric from the Phoenix Suns. So they had 4 NBA players. And I did watch the game. I did not watch any of Croatia's group stage games before this. But I heard and read today that Ivica Zubac started 4 of them. And he got anywhere between 18 to 29 minutes in all those games. And that's very similar to the type of minutes he gets with the Clippers. And that kind of surprises me because I'd figure an NBA player, a starting center for a championship favorite this upcoming season, would get at least 30 minutes for his national team, but I guess not. And maybe that's because they're also adopting kind of a small ball or smaller lineups that try to spread out and shoot the three. That's just a guess, though. So I watched the game today, really hoping it was Croatia versus Finland in the round of 16. Loser goes home, winner goes to the quarterfinals. And I was just hoping to see Zubac do his thing. But I was pleasantly surprised when Ivica Zubac was not starting, which the commentators on ESPN Plus did not say much about at all. And the entire half is going by and no sign of Zubac. And they're not playing any real traditional centers, Croatia. They were playing like some taller, longer bigs that I don't even know how tall they were. Probably around the 6'10 range. I didn't have like the roster in front of me or anything like that. But with 3 minutes left in the first half, Ivica Zubac checked into the game. And I'm thinking to myself, how was he not injured? I mean, how is he checking in with 3 minutes left in the half? And it's about a tie game at the point that he comes in. And he actually did he got involved a little bit. So 2 times he was challenged at the rim when he was playing defense, and he did a great job. First one, went up vertically, took the hit, no foul. Croatia gets the rebound. And then the second time, a guard tried to get by, and he came and helped and affected the shot, and that didn't even hit the rim. So again, Ivica Zubac in that 3-minute span, short 3-minute span, showing a little bit of why us Clipper fans or a side of Clipper Nation is so behind him for the upcoming season and has been behind him since he was traded to traded to Los Angeles in 2018. Or I'm sorry, early 2019. I've talked about on the podcast multiple times, if you remember, his ability to deter shots at the rim, blocking shots. But I also think an aspect of his game that's underrated is the verticality aspect, the way he's able to just take hits to the chest and go up straight, arms up, not following through and push and moving his hands downward, which is the way you get a foul in today's NBA very easily when you're contesting shots at the rim. Does a great job of keeping his hands straight up and not coming down and going up vertically. And he did that once in the game today. And then on offense, if I recall correctly, I think he only touched the ball one time, and they were fronting him in the post, and he did a really good job of sealing and turning his body and making sure if the Croatians moved the ball to another player, they would have a better angle to throw it into him. And they did. They threw it in the corner. He got the ball. It was a good defensive effort. They almost got a steal, but Zoo got the ball right underneath. 3 Finnish players went and swarmed him, and he got hit very clearly on the way up. And mind you, on the previous Croatian possession, Bojan Bogdanovic got a technical foul. And on this possession right after, Ivica Zubac gets no call, clear as day. But here's the thing. I don't know if it applies for FIBA, but in the NBA, and you're going to probably hear a lot of complaining from me this season on this, Ivica Zubac gets no respect from officials in the league. It's actually out of control. If you're a Clipper fan, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's insane. They treat him like he's a scrub. And I'm going to be pissed if that continues this season, and I already know it will. Because as a Clipper fan, you always tend to expect the worst. But he didn't get the call, and then Dario Saric got a technical, and the coach got a technical on that possession because they were mad that Zoo didn't get the call. And so that kind of was a hurt, or that kind of hurt Croatia's momentum. But they went into the half down by 2, or it was neck to neck. And then you didn't see Zoo for the rest of the game. And Finland won and knocked them out. And Lauri Markkanen was very impressive. Very impressive. And obviously, Lauri Markkanen recently traded to the Utah Jazz for Donovan Mitchell. But he was really impressive. Even hit a step back on Zoo, which Zoo defended well. Again, I think a lot of times, too, with Zoo is people are mad at him because he's not defending the perimeter very well. First of all, there aren't that many 7-footers, and I'm going to honestly try to keep reiterating this point as the season goes on and as I start analyzing games. How many of these centers can actually switch 1 to 5 like people think Zoo cannot do? Because yes, Zoo cannot switch 1 to 5 on the most elite guards in the NBA. A 7-foot center is not supposed to be able to do that in any era. Now, obviously, they're trying to practice more being lighter on their feet. Guys like Bam Adebayo are exceptions. Extreme exceptions. Even DeAndre Ayton, who I think is very good in space, a very solid defensive player, Luka Doncic targeted him big time, the same way he targets Zoo in that Game 7. So, again, it's really all about, and it doesn't just apply to bigs like Zoo. It applies to smaller guards, as I've talked about. If you can't switch 1 to 5 on everybody on the court in a specific lineup, they will try to get you, the guy who you're guarding, to set the screen on their best player handling the ball to try to make you make a decision and then play off of that. And that's where Zubac gets targeted at times. But if you really look at a lot of those shots that Luka Doncic has made over Ivica Zubac throughout the years, they are very well contested. Very well contested. And Luka Doncic is an exception because he's got that step back, move down pat. But there are a lot of guys in the league where Ivica Zubac puts a good hand up and they just make a great shot. And I think that people need to differentiate that sometimes when you get scored on, it's not always bad defense. And Zubac is being sometimes put in positions that are not extremely easy for people of his size to be put in. And I'm not saying that happened today. Lauri Markkanen made a great step back over him on one possession that he got scored on. And I wanted to mention that just because it just reminds me of when Zoo gets scored on by a very great shot maker, a great shot, and it's just a great shot. I mean, remember, this guy's 7 feet tall. You're shooting over him. That's not easy for anyone that's played basketball at any level to shoot over 6-footers, let alone 7-footers. But anyway, why do you only get 3 minutes, though? That's the big question. And that's the question that we're going to answer coming up. Kawhi Leonard is plus 2,500 to be the NBA regular season MVP in 2022-23. He's behind many, many players in those odds, including LeBron James, Zion Williamson, Steph Curry, John Morant, Jason Tatum, Nikola Jokic, Kevin Durant, Joel Embiid, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Luka Doncic. So I'd say those odds are pretty good to start placing your bets, Clipper Nation, on Kawhi Leonard to be MVP. And to do that, you got to go to betonline.net. It's your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all of the latest NBA developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week games. BetOnline is also your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action and the trends. Kawhi Leonard, MVP. The odds are not that high, so go place your bets. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, so Ivica Zubac did not play that much in the game. 3 minutes. So I went and tried to look online to see if I could find anything on that, and I did. Our good guy, Justin Russo, one of the Clipper writers at Flybynight on Twitter, posted for SB Nation and Clips Nation and wrote an article and said that Ivica Zubac, who had started 4 of Croatia's 5 Group C games, came off the bench and only played 3 minutes. And obviously, if I didn't mention it earlier, he didn't record a single point or rebound. But as I said, he did deter 2 shots. And it's been rumored, according to the article, that Zoo has been unable to practice for Croatia recently due to an ankle injury, which might have come in their previous game against Ukraine. He's averaging 11.4 points and 6.6 boards to go along with 1.6 blocks on 67% shooting in the tournament, which are pretty good stats. You'd obviously want to see them a little bit higher, closer to that double-double number that he gets really close to with the Clippers in terms of his average. But let's just talk about that real quick. In the article, Justin says that he was walking with a noticeable limp at times. But from my eyes, just watching the game, I didn't notice any limp. He looked fine to me. But it has to be an injury that he's only playing 3 minutes. It has to be, right? Because Ivica Zubac is an NBA player. He's a very solid player. I know there might be a scheme. It may be scheme related where they don't want to have a traditional big in. The Finnish players seem more perimeter oriented. But still, the way he can deter shots at the rim, his interior presence, he's an NBA starter on a championship contender. It has to be an injury. So the concern here is it a serious injury? I don't think so because he was literally playing. So the fact that he was playing tells me it's not that serious. There's also plenty of time before training camp. I mean, it is on the horizon, but especially plenty of time before preseason. And mainly what's important is that there's plenty of time before the regular season. And that's what's important. I don't think this is anything to be concerned about, Clipper fans. I think Ivica Zubac is going to be fine. It's sad to see his Croatian national team go out like this. And it's sad to see him not be able to make the impact that he probably wanted to make. But it is what it is. The important thing is, for us Clipper fans, is that Ivica Zubac is ready to go to start the season and hopefully can get some preseason reps in as well. But this just brings up the question again of, do the Clippers need a backup big? And I kind of got scared today, I'm not going to lie. Just seeing the possibility of Ivica Zubac being hurt. Because I'm thinking about it and looking at this roster that the Clippers have. And I'm talking about for the regular season, not the playoffs, but just to get the Clippers through the regular season. I think as of now, Ivica Zubac is the most indispensable player on the team. Because there's no direct replacement for him that's reliable. Because Moses Brown and Moussa Diabate, we've talked about it at length, these guys are not proven to be rotation. I mean, Moussa's a rookie. Moses Brown is not proven to be a rotation piece on a good team for the course of a season. Not like an Isaiah Hartenstein. Ivica Zubac is the only true center the Clippers have. So if he doesn't play and he's injured, the Clippers are in deep trouble. Which makes me realize they got to go out and get a backup big. They got to, because it's just too concerning. If Zubac even misses 10 games, I'm not even saying to start the season, just gets injured at any point of the season, they need to have some insurance. They need to have a backup that's reliable, that's played, even past these young guys. I've really come to that conclusion now. I mean, Asher and I talked about the market, and there were no big names on there that caught our eye. But thinking about this Clipper roster, I truly do believe that Ivica Zubac is the most indispensable player. Now, you might be wondering, why would you say that? Kawhi Leonard, on a given night, we have a direct replacement for him. His name's Paul George. He can do a lot of the things Kawhi can do. He's an elite scorer. He plays both ends of the floor. He can score from all three levels. He can post up. He can face up. You name it. So Paul George can be a superstar for us on a given occasion. You know, if no Reggie Jackson, now we have Norman Powell. You know, Luke Kennard can come in and do the job. Now we have John Wall. You take out John Wall, I mean, we still have the team from last season. You take out Amir Coffey, he may not even get in the rotation regularly. Terrence Mann is another great wing player. I thought Nico Batum, last season I called him the most indispensable player on the Clippers. But I think with the addition of Robert Covington, I think it makes it so that Nico Batum won't be depended on as much. And that's what my point is, that Ivica Zubac is the most indispensable player because the Clippers don't have a replacement for him. So they need to go out and get one. And coming up, I'm going to be revisiting the free agent list of bigs and picking a big to bring in. All right, to close it out, I visited the 2022 free agent list to see the possible backup centers for Ivica Zubac with Asher when he was on the podcast 2 episodes ago. By the way, I hope you enjoyed having the former host of Locked On Clippers, Charles Mockler, back on the show, and of course having Asher on, just having 2 people that were former Locked On hosts, and obviously Clipper fans as well, and just hearing guests come on with me, because it's been all me up until that point. So let me know what you think, let me know what you thought, and let me know in the comments after I reveal these names which one of them is your favorite. But also let me know about the guests and how you liked them as well. Let's start out. First, the same name I brought up to Asher first, LaMarcus Aldridge, 37 years old, one of the best power forwards of this generation. He's been able to play the 5 as the NBA has changed and gone into smaller lineups. He has the ability to stretch the floor, and you know he can score. But this is what I really want to focus on, and I think this is where the divide comes with having these discussions, is just a philosophical thing or a basketball philosophy thing. And that is, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a big man that's going to come in and help the Clippers score points? Or are we looking for a big man that's going to be able to hold his own on defense and maybe offer some added rim protection and not get cooked in pick and roll by backup guards? Because there are plenty of backup guards in the NBA that can cook you in pick and roll and cause damage, including ones that the Clippers have. So, that being said, and that's something that Asher talked about a lot, is he was looking at guys who were serviceable on defense, and he didn't see any names in the list that he was confident in. And LaMarcus Aldridge, I'm afraid I'm not going to sit here and act like I have the best opinion and knowledge of how well he's done defensively, specifically in the last year or two. But from what I remember seeing, he was old and past it, and he's not going to help the Clippers defensively. He's never even been a rim protector like that, and I would not go that route. The next choice, we already have Moses Brown, DeMarcus Cousins. So I've seen a couple of Clipper fans campaigning to get Boogie back, and I really love Boogie. And again, it goes to what I just said. Do we want to bring in a big man that can help the Clippers score and create shots, or do we want to bring in a big man that can hold his own defensively? Because that was the whole thing with Montrezl Harrell. The Clippers got rid of him because when Zubac went to the bench, they had no rim protection. They had no deterrent at the rim. Everybody was getting whatever they wanted. And because he was superior to Zubac offensively, Glenn Rivers kept him in. And that's when the Clippers would be vulnerable with guys getting to the basket. And that whole thing happened in the bubble. So that's why the Clippers went out and got Serge Ibaka the next year to try to have 2 rim-protecting bigs. Right now we have Zubac, DeMarcus Cousins, if you recall, The Clippers did bring him in when Serge Ibaka went with the back injury in 2021, and he was very solid in his role, had some good games for the Clippers, but in Game 6 against the Suns, Chris Paul put him in the pick and roll because Ivica Zubac was injured, and he got cooked, and the Clippers got cooked. So as much as I love DeMarcus Cousins and want to see him play for another team and play a role as a backup, a good role as a backup for another team, I don't know why the Denver Nuggets wouldn't bring him back. I thought he was really solid for them in the playoffs off the bench, but it's not the Clippers. It's not for the Clippers, in my opinion. And then there was Ed Davis, who Asher said was the best choice, probably, outside of Cody Zeller. But I think Ed Davis, from my memory, rebounded the ball better and blocked shots better than Cody Zeller. I think Cody Zeller would be a decent roller, can score around the rim a little bit, but I just don't. I want a little bit more athleticism there if I'm the Clippers. And his freedom, no. And then Montrezl Harrell just got picked up by the 76ers, so he and Glenn are reuniting, which, man, I'm not going to pull any punches, but I really don't like that team. I really don't like that team, but I do like Tobias Harris a lot. That's a Clipper I'll always have a lot of love for. I think he was really great in that transition between the Paul George Kawhi era and the Blake and the Lob City era. Dwight Howard, also on the market. I honestly think he's washed. I watched him at length last season with the Lakers and then a little bit with the Sixers, and he was washed. He just didn't look himself at all. So I don't think that he would be. Honestly, I would rather have Ed Davis, if I'm being real. And then Greg Monroe. What's crazy is he's only 32 years old. He seems way older. But again, he's not a pick and roll defensive big. He's never been. He's more of a scorer, and I think he's a good, solid scorer in the post, but just not what the Clippers need, because I just don't think the Clippers are going to struggle to create shots. I don't think the Clippers are going to struggle to score points. I think they have so much great shot creation, especially with the additions of Norman Powell, John Wall. But sometimes I do think the Clippers need more interior scoring, easier baskets, which is why they went out and got John Wall to get to the basket. But none of these guys are good enough in the post. I guess Boogie. But that's where I think the Clippers need to utilize Zoo more, is in the post. And I don't think that these backup bigs are going to even be on the court enough to give him touches like that and get him going in that way. Tristan Thompson, I would steer clear from him. I just haven't noticed anything, and I watched him very frequently with the Celtics in 2021. Not much there. Cody Zeller, I mean, just doesn't pop out. And I'm not a fan of this guy, but I ultimately think this is the guy that the Clippers should bring in, and that's Hassan Whiteside. And the only reason I say that is because he has a reputation as a shot blocker. And at the very least, even if he's not good defensively in the pick and roll, he at least has size, and we know as NBA fans that he can block shots. Last season, he played 18 minutes a game as the backup center for Rudy Gobert on Utah, a playoff team at that. That was the 5th seed in the West. And he averaged 7.6 rebounds a game and 8 points a game. So 8 and 7 is actually not that bad. For a backup big, that's pretty good. And he shot 65%, which is definitely one of the highest in the league. So I don't think that's a bad idea for the Clippers to go out and try to sign Hassan Whiteside. The previous year in Sacramento, he only played 36 games, and he averaged 8 and 6. So about the same. I don't think it's a bad idea to go out and get him. But ultimately, I'm very adamant now that the Clippers do need to go out and get a backup big, because just the possibility of Ivica Zubac getting injured is just terrible. The Clippers just don't have a backup for him. And I'm really excited to see Moussa Diabate play, but they're going to need a little bit more. And that's why I think Hassan Whiteside ultimately, even though I've never really been a fan of his, because I just don't think that he's very coordinated offensively at the NBA level. Don't think he's got great touch around the basket. Kind of reminds me of DeAndre Jordan and his lack of offensive skill, scoring the basketball. And that's one of my pet peeves just as a kid. I never liked the big men that couldn't score or couldn't create against smaller guys or just weren't fundamentally sound per se. And that's why I'm such a big Ivica Zubac advocate, because he actually does have some post fundamentals and some skill, and he has a jump hook, which I've talked about before. But yeah, overall, Hassan Whiteside just has a reputation as a shot blocker. So that's why I would bring him in if I were the Clippers. But who do you think we should bring in? I listed a bunch of names. I want to know from you in the comment section on YouTube, which is the best way to keep growing the show. Let me know. Who do you think was the best option? And do you think that this little injury scare to Zubac is the kind of light bulb moment that the Clippers need to have to go, okay, need to go out and get a backup big just to have some insurance? Let me know if you feel that way. And also, make sure for your second listen of the day to check in with Locked On NBA, various hosts that host their own Locked On shows like Locked On Mavs, Locked On Celtics, Locked On Rockets, coming together to host a Locked On NBA show, your daily NBA update in just 30 minutes, which is the average length for most of our Locked On podcasts here. And remember, if you want to find me, you can always find me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. And of course, for a more uncensored, more fan-centric, even more fan-centric, I know, believe it or not, view of the Clippers and the NBA as a whole, including a lot of NBA history content and LA sports as a whole. For example, the Rams, I work for them now, so I vlog every game, just the same way I vlog Clipper games when I go to them. Check my YouTube channel out, Dime Dropper. I changed it. It's not Dime Dropper Podcast anymore, just Dime Dropper on YouTube. So check that out. And of course, my podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as this podcast. Thank you for listening. Make sure you comment on the YouTube channel and subscribe if you're not, trying to get Locked On Clippers up to 1,000. And of course, go Clippers.